The Great Emu War. 8 Astonishing Facts About Australia's Strangest Military Conflict. Today on this episode of Liber-Tea, we are deep delving into one of the most peculiar and captivating events in military history, the Great Emu War. Get ready to embark on a wild journey through Australia's strangest military conflict as we uncover 8 astonishing facts that will leave you in awe. A desperate battle. In the early 20th century, Australia was facing an agricultural crisis due to the Great Depression and a severe drought. This led many farmers in Western Australia to turn to wheat farming as a means of survival. However, their efforts were soon thwarted by a large population of emus that had migrated to the region. These flightless birds, known for their voracious appetite, began to wreak havoc on the farms, destroying crops and damaging property. In a desperate attempt to protect their livelihoods, the farmers appealed to the government for assistance. The authorities responded by sending in a group of soldiers armed with machine guns to cull the emu population. However, the mission proved to be a failure, as the emus proved to be wily opponents, outmaneuvering the soldiers and evading their bullets. This led to a prolonged conflict known as the Great Emu War, which would go down in history as one of the most bizarre military campaigns ever waged. World War I veterans turned farmers. After World War I, many soldiers returned home to find that the job market was scarce. The Australian government sought to address this issue by offering soldiers land grants in rural areas with the hope that they would become successful farmers. These ex-soldiers, known as soldier settlers, faced many challenges in their new lives as farmers, including poor soil quality, unpredictable weather patterns, and a lack of experience in agriculture. Despite these obstacles, many soldier settlers were determined to make it work. They formed close-knit communities and supported each other through the hardships of farming life. However, in the 1930s, the soldier settlers faced a new challenge. A plague of emus was destroying their crops. The government responded by sending in the military to assist the farmers in culling the emu population. This became known as the Emu War, which lasted for several months and ultimately ended in a victory for the emus. While the conflict may have been unsuccessful in terms of its intended outcome, it highlighted the struggles and perseverance of these World War I veterans turned farmers. The Emu Invasion. The Emu Invasion had a devastating impact on the Australian economy, particularly on the farmers whose livelihoods rely heavily on crop production. The emus caused extensive damage to crops, with reports of entire fields being destroyed in just a matter of days. This resulted in significant financial losses for farmers who were unable to harvest their crops and meet market demands. Moreover, the Emu Invasion also had a ripple effect on other industries that rely on agriculture, such as food processing and transportation. With a decrease in the availability of crops, these industries were forced to import goods from other countries, which further added to the economic burden. Despite numerous efforts to control the emu population, the problem persists to this day. The Australian government has implemented various measures such as culling and egg sterilization programs, but the effectiveness of these methods remains questionable. Military intervention. The involvement of the Australian government and military in the conflict between the British and Ottoman empires during World War I is a well-known part of Australian history. However, less well-known is the controversial decision made by then Defence Minister Sir George Pearce to send Australian troops to intervene in the Russian Civil War in 1918. Pearce's decision was met with mixed reactions from both the public and within the government itself. Some argued that it was not Australia's place to involve itself in the affairs of other nations, while others saw it as an opportunity for Australia to secure its place on the world stage. Despite the criticism, Pearce remained steadfast in his belief that military intervention was necessary to prevent the spread of communism. The decision ultimately proved to be a costly one, both in terms of lives lost and financial resources expended. Nonetheless, Pierce's willingness to take a controversial stance and follow through on his convictions is a testament to the strength of his leadership and commitment to Australia's interests on the global stage. Unconventional warfare tactics. The use of Lewis guns and other military equipment against the emus in Australia is one of the most peculiar yet fascinating events in history. In 1932, a group of Australian farmers were facing a serious problem, an invasion of emus. These flightless birds were destroying their crops, and despite several attempts to repel them, nothing seemed to work. The farmers then decided to request military assistance, and the Australian government sent Major G.P.W. Meredith and a team of soldiers armed with Lewis guns to deal with the situation. The plan was simple: use machine guns to kill as many emus as possible. Despite setbacks, the soldiers managed to kill a significant number of emus, but not enough to solve the problem completely. Eventually, the operation was called off, and the emus remained a nuisance for the farmers. Public outrage and criticism. The backlash against the conflict from both Australian citizens and international conservationist groups was swift and vocal. Many Australians were outraged that their military was being used to fight against wildlife, particularly when the country was still reeling from the effects of World War I. Conservationists around the world condemned the Emu War as a senseless act of violence against innocent animals and called for an end to the conflict. The Australian government faced mounting pressure to halt the campaign, but persisted in their efforts to rid the country of the emu threat. Despite the public outcry, the war continued for several more weeks, until eventually the military was forced to admit defeat and withdraw from the battlefield. While the Emu War may have seemed like a minor skirmish at the time, it has since become emblematic of humanity's fraught relationship with the natural world, and a cautionary tale about the dangers of using force to solve complex problems. Alternative solutions. The introduction of non-military methods to control the emu population and protect crops has been a topic of discussion among farmers and wildlife experts. One of the alternative solutions proposed is the implementation of bounty systems. This involves offering rewards to hunters who successfully cull emus in areas where they pose a threat to crops. Another alternative solution that has been explored is the use of exclusion fencing. This involves building fences around agricultural lands to prevent emus and other wildlife from accessing them. While this method requires significant investment, it has been somewhat successful in Australia, where farmers have reported a reduction in crop damage. Both of these alternative solutions have their pros and cons, and it is important to consider all factors before implementing them. However, they offer non-lethal methods of controlling the emu population and protecting crops, which can be beneficial for both farmers and wildlife conservation efforts. From musicals to movies. The enduring fascination with the conflict and its portrayal in various forms of media is a testament to its place in Australian folklore. The Emu War has since become a source of inspiration for a number of artistic works, including musicals, movies, and even video games. One of the most popular adaptations is the 2019 Australian comedy film, The Emu War, which tells the story of a group of soldiers who are sent to battle the emus and find themselves woefully unprepared for the task at hand. The film, which stars some of Australia's top comedic actors, has been praised for its irreverent humor and its ability to capture the absurdity of the conflict. In addition to the film, there have been several stage productions and musicals inspired by the Emu War. These include Emu, the Musical, a satirical take on the conflict that features catchy songs and witty dialogue, and the Emu War Reenactment, a theatrical performance that recreates the events of the war in a humorous and entertaining way. Even in the world of video games, the Emu War has left its mark. In 2016, a game called EMU, Emus Must Die, was released, in which players take on the role of a soldier tasked with culling the emu population. While the game sparked controversy among animal rights activists, it also served as a reminder of the enduring fascination with this strange and fascinating chapter in Australian history. Despite the varied interpretations of the Great Emu War, one thing remains constant: its enduring appeal to audiences around the world. Whether viewed as a cautionary tale about the dangers of overconfidence or simply as a source of amusement, the conflict continues to capture the imagination and inspire new works of art to this day. Thank you for joining in this strange yet fascinating episode of Liber-Tea. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment, and share what other incredible events you would like to see featured.